All right, before we go talking about issues in the Senate, let's just tell you briefly of the Supreme Court judgment just handed down a while ago, saying that the 26 lawmakers in Rivers have to get back to making the law, and that the fear of impeachment by the governor, Simi Fubara, is no reason to go against the existing laws where you deny lawmakers their right to make laws. We see how that plays out in the days following this Supreme Court judgment. But now, let's turn to the issue at hand. With the battle line drawn with the mudslings between Senator Natasha Botiduanga and the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, what's next? With the supposed sanctity of the Senate chamber utterly bruised, I am suitably delighted to have Senator Biodun Olujimi, former Senate Minority Leader and the sponsor of the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill at the 9th Assembly. She joins us on Arise Prime Time. Glad to have you join us, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's just start this discussion this way. The Senate President says what's causing this rift causing this rift in the Senate, anyway, as it were, is what he calls court-declared senators. Court-declared senators. What do you even make of that statement? And do you agree with him?
I do not agree with that, because I also went back to the 9th Assembly from the courts. And so I do not agree with that. But you see, I can understand where he's coming from. What happens is when you come midstream, you miss all the orientation of senators before they are really embedded into the work of the Senate. So if you do miss that, you are likely to make a lot of mistakes. And that was probably the reason why he said that. And he embellished it by saying when you come midstream, you miss a lot. Truly, if you miss the orientation, it's tough to get a hang of what you need to do, because the Senate or the National Assembly is one of the most regulated institutions in our time.
All right, so that makes me to ask, well, he has ordered what you were just saying, he calls for an orientation program for fresh senators because they lack understanding of the Senate guidelines. Shouldn't the management of the Senate be blamed for this? I mean, yes, you said that they came midstream, but there should be a program, because you could envisage this. So they were not, if you like, visionary.
Usually it is a case of funding. The funding is usually for a particular period. And so it's tough to go look for funds for just 2 or 3 people and bring in all the experts all over again. So when you come in midstream, you are left on your own and you learn to manage within the Senate on your own.
All right. Now let's begin to get into the brass tacks of this whole issue. Some enlightened Nigerians on sitting arrangements. I mean, the story is that there's no way she could have been allowed to speak because she was out of order. I did actually discuss with our reporter. I did, because initially I made some comments, but eventually, as things wore on, I wanted to find out what really is the issue here. So the talk is that there's no way she could have been allowed to speak because she was out of order, not speaking from her assigned seat. Is that true? Is that what holds sway in the Senate?
There's something called the Red Book in the Senate. You're given the day you come in. You're supposed to go through it and learn it by heart for the period you will spend within the Senate. One of them is that you can never speak outside of your seat. You can't. It is a rule and it is binding. I came back, like I said, into the 9th Senate from the courts, and it took them time to rearrange the seats before I could get a proper seat, because I left the A Senate as a leader. Okay. I was in the leadership. So they had to adjust the seats. In fact, Senators like Senator James Manager, who had been there for over 4 terms, 16 years, had to move for me to be allocated a seat because I left as a minority leader. And that is part of the rules of the Senate. It's binding. We all know it. We learn it by heart. And it works well when you learn to understand how to manage it.
It works well when you understand how to manage. So would you then say that Aboti didn't manage it well? And just add to that, Aboti says the president of the Senate made a mistake by not letting her speak on Order 10. And she was earlier warned by her colleagues not to challenge Akpabio on the change of seat. So did she not manage it well? What about the Order 10 and then the warning?
It's all about management. You know, the Senate is for the elderly. It's not for the young. It's for people who would have been through life, seen it all, and are willing to just work.
Supposedly seen it all.
Seen it all, supposedly. And work well for the country. And so when you are there, you comport yourself, you manage people. Order 10 is not difficult to manage, but the chief whip stood up before she proclaimed Order 10 and said to the Senate President, Senator Natasha cannot speak from there because she's not on her allotted seat.
Okay, so it was not started by the President of the Senate?
No, it was the chief whip.
That caution.
And that is his job. He is in charge of the chambers. He maintains law and order. That is why he's called the chief whip. The Senate President didn't start it. I watched it. It was the chief whip that got up and laid a complaint, and then the Senate President ruled on it. Once the gavel goes down, you really cannot do much because it's over. So he ruled on it and said, you must go to your seat before you speak. So whatever order you bring after then cannot work.
So Order 10 does not work here?
It cannot work.
So she's out of order?
That was what the Senate President said. I rule this out of order. And when it's out of order, it's out of order.
You're wasting your time.
The rest is history.
Someone, excuse me, someone has mentioned that the President of the Senate, even though he's is it the first among equals or something?
Yeah, first among
equals. Has said that he wields so much power. Is that the truth? Is that the true description of things, that he wields so much power?
I don't understand in what context that was said. But look at it this way. Does the president of the nation wield power?
It must be based on the Constitution.
That's it. And so the president of the Senate also wields power in relations to the Red Book, which is the Constitution of the Senate.
Which all of you agree to.
Which all of us agree to and swear to.
Now, Akpoti, on her Instagram handle yesterday, demanded an open hearing on the matter by allowing television stations to broadcast the session live to Nigerians. Is this just a cry of somebody who felt undone? Or, I mean, can this hold? Does it make, well, what sense do you make of it?
That's a little overboard, but it must be a cry from someone who's looking for succor, who feels she needs to be heard. But there are several channels within the Senate and the National Assembly where any aggrieved member can resolve all issues. Don't forget that the Senate President is the chairman of the National Assembly. overall chairman of both chambers. So you can resolve it without escalating it. She probably will not be the only one that has gone through difficult times. We all do.
Kingibe said her seat has been changed sometimes.
That is the way it is in the Senate. In fact, Senator Akpabio's seat was changed when he crossed over. I was then in the leadership, and of course, you know, we all have the ways by which we do things. We were not happy that he had gone over, and then he wanted to take his seat as a leader in front.
Yeah.
Don't forget that he too was then a first timer.
Yeah.
So there was no microphone there, and he felt he should be there. But there was no microphone. But guess what he did? He did not speak directly to the Senate president. He spoke to the leader of the Senate, who insisted that he couldn't sit there. He spoke to him, and every argument was directly to the leader, not to the presiding officer. You know, you need to give a bit of respect to
and
whoever is presiding. He spoke to the leader, and when it was resolved between them, he came up and apologized immediately.
Oh, he did?
He did, almost immediately. If you look in the video, I was sitting down there. I was in yellow. I sat down there because I was wondering what a former leader would do after reading the book, because, you know, he's a very intelligent man, Senator Akpabio. So I expected him to have read and he did the right thing. He didn't talk directly to the Senate president. He spoke to the leader. And when the leader explained to him, he came and apologized to the entire Senate and to the leader.
The entire Senate?
Yes.
Did he change his seat eventually?
Yeah, they had to look for another seat for him because there was no microphone there.
Oh, which means even if he wanted to, he can't make any.
He couldn't have been able to speak.
And it was on
there.
purpose?
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about that.
It would have been on purpose for him not to have a microphone.
It couldn't have been on purpose. Maybe the police...
No, it was on purpose for him not to have a microphone.
We were in the throes of rearranging the Senate at that time.
I probably expect that you said that. All right. Well, some Nigerians say if the Senate President or the Ethics Committee goes ahead and suspends Natasha Akpoti, that is to be deemed retaliation. Do you agree? That's a big one.
It's a very big one. Some of us have intervened because, you see, when the big stick is wielded, there's nothing you can do about it because it's allowed. It's in the books. But you see, you can't throw the baby away with the bathwater. Yeah, we all make mistakes. We made mistakes too when we were there. But when mistakes are made on both sides, you need to have a rapprochement, something the military does. Bring everybody together. Let's see how we can pacify everybody and people go their way. Especially because the two of them are like family members.
Yeah, I heard that.
It's incredible how things would have degenerated to that level. And externalizing everything from the Senate is not the best for the institution. We want to grow strong institutions. We want to manage strong institutions. And so we must also be able to manage our temperament, manage our egos, manage the problems that come around. Who says there won't be problems? We had more women in the 8th and 9th Senate than they have now. But we had a bond. All of us worked together. We held each other's hands. An injury to one was injury to all. Because we understood what was at stake. And we were always cautioning each other where any one of us was going out of line. And so we never went out of tune, and we were able to resolve the issues from within rather than weaken the institution that we all swore to support.
I will come back to the question that some are raising about Biodun's antecedents. But before I get to that, let me ask you this. Natasha Akpoti likened her predicament, this is her speaking, in the hands of the Senate President as a young female student. That will probably eventually bring us to your bill, that as a young female student who refused sexual advances from a lecturer, but vowed to maintain her integrity in the midst of any form of victimization. Is this what it is? I mean, she's alleging that the senator president made sexual advances, and so because of that, all the issue, the washing of dating linens in public are being unearthed.
It's a weighty allegation, sexual harassment, and a person like me will not condone that. However, at a particular age, it's a two-way project. And so, to be able to get to the bottom of it, someone must find out from the other person the veracity of the claim. Because you see, at a particular age, because Senator Natasha is no longer a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. I'm sure she's in her late 40s or mid 40s.
Yeah.
And so it becomes something between them. But I want to say that in the 8th and 9th Senate, we never had anything like that. And Senator Akpabio was one of us. He was one of the members. They treated us with dignity and with decorum. And we didn't have anything like that. And I've not heard of such from any other of the remaining senators. So it's tough for me to be able to take that without proper investigation.
So there has to be
an investigation.
Well,
yeah.
Atiku, the leader of the PDP or former presidential candidate of the PDP, has spoken, well, he has made comments about this issue to the president. He said this is the way the president should handle it. Let me read what Atiku said. He said, Atiku is asking the president to take these allegations seriously by ensuring a credible, transparent, and independent investigation.
I also believe that, because you must situate these things properly. Those allegations are weighty against a presiding officer, the number 3 person.
I'll just ask you to pause a little bit. We'll have a breaking news coming in, and it's that Trump, before we did bring you the talk between Trump and Zelensky, and we're gathering that the mineral deal that was supposed to be signed between the two have been cancelled. We'll bring you more of this in our bulletins going forward. So back to you. We're talking about Atiku asking the president what to do about this. That there should be thorough investigation.
Yes, I also believe that. So that we know if the Senate president is going out of his way to do certain things that are unpleasant, and situate it properly where and what to do.
All right, I had discussed Order 10 with you before. I'd asked you about Order 10 before, so I won't go back to that. But does this issue not point to, because in my lead intro, I talked about there were even family friends, even before King Igwe had said that, and that the 3 senators were not friends with Akpabio, but Natasha and Akpabio were friends even before she got into the Senate. So, is not this the issue of underlying tensions between the Senate president and Natasha, and not about seats? Do you think so? What do you think?
Not about what?
Is it really about the seating arrangement, or underlying tensions between both parties?
It was tension had built, and the aggression was just about time. She needed to let off the steam, It must have gone beyond that because there was also the committee change. So a lot of things.
Yeah, the content was removed from the.
A lot of things must have happened
Under the water.
under the waters, which people outside do not know about, because definitely the change of committee was major, much more bigger than whatever we're talking about.
Okay. We can't finish this interview without bringing this in. Some are also pointing to the fact that Biodun, the Senate President, has had a history with strong women in power. There was Nunier of the NDDC,
Joy,
who I think the allegation was that she slapped, and it was also the sexual harassment thing. Then there was Kingibe herself, who is actually berating Natasha for taking this to court. We'll come to that. And then now Aboti. So some would say, why you all the time? And why strong women in power, so to speak?
let me say to you that first, let me reiterate that I took over from him as a minority leader. And so I kind of know him, know his wife very well. I know that he jokes a lot.
Ababi, right?
Yes. He's fond of making little fun out of everything.
Or would you call it unguarded statements?
Not unguarded, but he loves to make everything light. And you see, when you do that, you become very vulnerable. So it makes him very vulnerable. I saw what they all went through as men when I was there. They were all victimized by people from outside. And I had to rescue them all of the time.
What do you mean victimized?
You see, it's difficult to explain what they go through there. And so they make light of every issue. Most of the men there go through a lot themselves. It's not as easy as you see it. They also internalize a lot of things. You find people calling them from outside, putting their wives on the spot and making different issues out of nothing. And so they also go through that. And I've had to support some of them to even go home to say, no, this can't be true. So they are all very vulnerable.
Okay. Now, we don't have all the time, very limited time, but I want to put these two questions across to you. You can manage it in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. What's your take on the 103 billion naira suit filed by Aboti against the Senate President and others? And then secondly, the bill on female gender and sexual violence against women was eventually passed. It eventually passed secondly, but initially it was rejected by some women in the Senate. Talk to us about it.
The case in court, I want to appeal to her to please take the case out of court. Because you see, we don't want women to look like they're emotionally unstable. We need to also be strong enough to face the men. I mean, going to court against the presiding officer is not on. I know she's hurt, but she needs to handle it in a better way. I think that should get out of court as fast as possible.
Just briefly and quickly on the female gender.
On the female, the gender thing, and women were against it.
Women were against it.
Women were against the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill.
That's funny.
That it's not funny. It's because of the culture, the cultural biases, the ethnic biases, the religious biases. And that is what we all grapple with in Nigeria. And that is what lawmakers also grapple with. It is second reading. It has not gone for public hearing.
Yeah.
And it's not come back for third. So it's still a long way off.
Still a long way off.
It's still a long way off.
All right, thank you,
I
sir.
pray it scales through because that's what we've been fighting for.
No, but now you're not there. I wonder what happens.
Yeah. We have strong women there.
Okay. Like
Senator Kingibe is taking charge. Senator Adebole is there. And of course...
former Lagos State Deputy Governor.
Yes, and the former River State Deputy Governor.
Harry.
Pali
Buhari.
Palipo.
Just 4 women in the
Palibo.
Senate. That's
Yeah.
a very,
Very thin.
out of 109.
Yeah,
What are women
109.
doing? But we'll leave it there. Maybe it's
What are the
time.
men doing?
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for being on
Thank
the
you very
program.
much.
Very delighted to have you here.
Thank you.